Weird to say good afternoon because I'm used to saying good morning. Welcome to those of you returning, to those of you who are visiting. My name is Rebecca Grenovan, and I'm the pastoral associate here at Bush Hill. We have the distinct honor and pleasure of having Gary Harmon join us today for a talk about accessibility and inclusivity in the church. We are now deciding to deem it Love Before You Look, a discussion with Gary Harmon. And you might hear more about that later today. But what we'd love to do is invite Gary to say a few words to us, explain who he is, why he's here, why this is important, and then open the floor to questions from you all. I have some index cards here that folks wrote down questions on at lunch, and I have some in my pocket, but we also do want to invite everyone here to ask those burning questions, even if they might be uncomfortable. This is a safe and brave space. So yes, without further ado, Gary, thank you so much for being here. We are really thrilled to have you, and we look forward.
Thank you, Rebecca. Can you hear me okay? Good, good. I want to say a couple of thank yous before I begin. First of all, where's your mother? There she is, standing up behind me. She's so pretty, sometimes I can't see her. I keep going, why is a pretty girl married to me? And I don't know the answer to that. This is my wife, Catherine. I would be nowhere without this woman. I would still be in Knoxville going, I can't get all the way up there. And I wouldn't know how to find it. I would never know what to have to eat. I'd still be naked. I love this woman, and I please ask you to welcome her here as well, please. I also have a roadie here with me today who carries my equipment. He helps the old man get up out of a chair sometimes when he can't. He's my younger son, and he looks like his mother, thank God. This is Nathan. My older son is 23 and knows everything already, so he didn't need to be here. But that's okay. In the back is a young man named Silas. He's going to do the slides, right? Thank you, Silas. Give him a hand. I appreciate it. If it's technical, I don't know how to run it. So there we go. I have a cell phone that runs me, so I don't know the rest. I want you to know before I ever get started on anything else that this is what I have committed to talk about. I like this topic. I believe it's important. And I think we've got a lot of work to do in this area. And when I retired 5.5 years ago, and 50 pounds ago too, by the way. But anyway, when I retired, my commitment to God was that I wasn't going to sit down. Well, I will. I brought a chair. But not all the time. What I wanted to do is to get out and talk about living with a disability. No, I don't consider myself limited in any way. But I use that term because I'm a member of a community of people who may look a little differently, they may think a little differently, but we're fully beautiful children of God. And I think it's important to get that message out and talk about it. So I have dedicated the last part of my life to this. And I'm so grateful to how many doors have opened as I finally said yes to God. I spent my whole life going, no, I'm going to be a teacher, leave me alone, leave me alone. And finally, it dawned on me I had time. So I did it. So I'm here. I know some of you have read my book. Some of you have not. I don't take off if you haven't read the book. You can still pass the class. And I hope you will still ask questions. Whether you've read the book or not, the questions are welcome. I taught for 34 years. The last 24 years, the only question I got is, can I go to the bathroom? And I always said, I doubt it very seriously. You can't even ask correctly. And, okay, may I go to the bathroom? Well, you got that right, but no, you can't. And that was the end of my career right there. So I really love thoughtful questions. It means you care, and I appreciate that. Don't feel like you're going to confuse me or scare me. I had one lady say, well, I don't want to ask you about your hands. And I went, oh, I don't have any. Really? I figured it out already. So it's okay. It's okay. So I hope that you will. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to give you what I call my 10 barrier breakers, and that's some rules I came up with to help us understand each other a little better. I don't know that you've heard him from this direction before, so I hope that'll help. Please feel free to criticize or agree or whatever you feel like doing, but I will try to make them relevant for you. First of all, I am the result of something called amniotic band syndrome. What that is when my mother was pregnant with me, for reasons we don't know, the amniotic sac, which is that clear bag that babies grow into. I'd like to explain this because there are men in the room, and we don't know. We don't have a clue. So anyway, the amniotic sac is made out of 2 layers, the outer layer and the inner layer. And for some reason, my mother's amniotic sac shredded while she was carrying me. She told me it was probably because I was not behaving myself, and I tore it up myself. Probably did. She also used to tell me that my little arm, hold on, I'll show it to you. I covered it up, but I didn't mean to. I'm not ashamed of it. I have an arm like this. This little bone right here is my wrist bone. You have one of those too. And my hand would have sat right here on top of the arm. And my mother used to say, when she was pregnant, I'd take this arm and poke her in the ribs. And I always say, I don't feel sorry for you, Mother. I'm sorry. But I don't care. I poked you in the rib. Good. Did it bruise? Yes. Okay. Well, too bad. And I just couldn't feel sympathy. But I was born, I got wrapped into those bands. And it prevented the growth of my hand and my fingers on this side. If you actually look closely, you can see the 3 fingers that didn't grow are little buds on the bottom of my palm. And they're still there, and I guess always will. I had a crazy uncle who used to tell my mom if she would put my hand in a glass of water every day, the fingers would grow. And my mother's like, you're an idiot, shut up. And so didn't try that, and it didn't work. I also do not have feet. I have legs. I have heels. And I have the front of the leg, but I don't have the foot part that grows out with those cute little toes you have. I don't have those. I stand on prosthetic legs, and that I am not this tall. Because my limbs are affected, my limbs are shorter than a man who my size would be. You notice my arms look fairly short, right? And so do my legs. And if I had the braces off and stood without them, I'm somewhere around 5 feet 4 inches tall. The rest is what we call artificial height. And I don't know how they do it. They use math, which was always a mystery to me. But they measure my spinal cord and figure out how tall I'm supposed to be, and then made me that tall. A couple times, just for jokes, they would make my legs make me 7 feet tall. And that was cool. I liked that. I'd walk around the shop and go, hey, how you doing? And it was fun. Here's the problem. If you drop something, it's gone forever. And that's still true with me today. And many times I would call Nathan and say, hey, Nathan, I dropped this. Will you pick it up for me? And he'd look at me and go, what about you? And I said, my child, what do you think we had kids? I had kids, so if I drop something, you can pick it up. And that's what he does. Sweet kid. But anyway, there are some other things that also got affected that we don't really know why. I don't have all of my facial muscles. I can't completely close my eyes. I do, now that I have bags under them and I'm nice and chubby, they close better than they did when I was young. Yeah, I don't think that's funny. I think it's sad. But anyway, I have a waddle to store extra food. Comfortable. But anyway, the eye thing is really cool if you have young children. Because you can sit in your chair and take a nap, and they think you're watching them. And My voice would be in the floor fighting over a toy, and Catherine would walk in and go, you know, your dad's watching you, right? I'm going to hurt somebody. I'd wake up with that. Okay, Dad, I'm sorry. And they would quit. I think it took her a while after we got married to quit looking over and go, oh, my God, his eyes are open. He's dead. She quit that after a while. It didn't take too long. I also have a sternum that only comes down to right here. My ribs have to reach up and grow into it. And I don't have all the ligaments that you do that attach your rib cage to your lungs. So the interior half of each lung folded at birth and never worked. Only the outside half of each lung works. That's why I'm breathing so heavily and I'm not even walking around yet, right? I always did this. I like to tease that I sound a little like Darth Vader. But this is not a disability. Because what I would do is when I was dating Catherine, I'd call her and go, hey, baby, how you doing? And she'd go, ooh, nice. And you put a little French with that. I used to teach French. Qu'est-ce que vous avez fait maintenant? Oh, la la. It was great. That's how I got her to marry me. I didn't have any money. Quit looking at me that way. He's like, spend money on her. That's what we did. But anyway, so that's the difference as well. And I think that's about all of them, but it's a list. And when I was born, it was in 1960. I'm 64. I was spare the math. But I was born in Clarksville, Tennessee. It's a very small town. It had a very rural hospital. And when I was born, my mother's doctor had never seen a baby like me before. And so he brought my father in, something they didn't do back in the 60s, and sat him down by my mother, and he said, I'm really sorry, but your baby will only live about a week. And they were crying. My dad was like, okay. My mother was crying. My dad was not. And my doctor told her, or her doctor told him that what he was going to do is he was going to order the nurses not to feed me and not to bathe me, because that was just going to delay the inevitable. I was going to die. That's all there was to it, and we needed to accept that. And he said, now, one more thing before I go. He said, if you give him a name that you wanted him to have, you're going to have it on the tombstone for the rest of your life. You might want to save that name for a baby that's going to live. That was the nicest thing he ever did for me, because they were going to name me after my father, who's James Oliver Harmon Jr., Sr. The name James is nice. Oliver, I could do without. I didn't really love that name, so my brother got it. And that's okay. And I like the joke about this, and I don't mean to be cruel, but I'm still here 64 years later, and the doctor is dead. That's just how life works, isn't it? So I made it, and he did not. So there you go. But my parents were very upset. They thought that I was going to go. And every day they would check on me and wait, and I was still there. The nurses, by the way, disobeyed the doctor immediately. They told my mother that they did not have a habit of following that nut's suggestions, and of course they were not going to have a baby they didn't feed or clean. So they took care of me as they were supposed to. A week later, my mother took me home. The doctor followed her out of the hospital saying, please don't take it. He's just going to die at your house. And she said, if he's going to die, he's going to be in my rocker with me rocking him. And so she took me home. He then called the nurses together and fired them. I found out later, when I was old enough to hear this story, that they became school nurses. I don't know if that's why I became a teacher or not, but maybe it was. I'm not really sure. I never got to meet them, and I wish I could have. I would have liked that. So here they were in Clarksville, Tennessee, with something out of a B movie that looked like a little creature from the lagoon, and they didn't know what to do with me. And fortunately, I had a cousin who was a social worker, and she called my mother and said that in Nashville, they had something called the Junior League Crippled Children's Home. And no, we don't use that term anymore, but back in those days, it was normal. And my mother enrolled me. I was accepted. The requirements were you had to be from a low-income family, check, and I had to have a disability, check. So I got qualified. And my father said that was too far to drive to take me, and my mother didn't drive at the time, so she started taking driver's lessons so that she could take me. And my dad gave in and took me and her. She did learn to drive, by the way, and by the time I was old enough to know the difference, she could drive me anywhere she needed. But my mother wasn't going to just sit back. So they took me to this home, not to live there. I was an outpatient. But they would have Vanderbilt doctors who would check me out and make suggestions for how to improve me. One of the things they did is they broke my legs twice and reshaped them so that I could walk. And the doctor taught me something that I use with my own children. I would cry and say, I don't want surgery. That's going to hurt. I don't want to do that. And he would say to me, and Catherine can testify, I say this to my oldest all the time. He would say, Gary, it might hurt the little boy you, but the grown man you is going to be able to walk. And I'm working for the grown man, not for the baby. And guess what? I can walk. You may applaud now. Thank you. I'm gone now. Bye. That's my, oh, no, just kidding. I'm just kidding. Now, I'm very proud of that. And whenever there was any talk of surgery, the doctor, who is Dr. Brooks, would come in. I called him something else in the book. I don't know. I don't remember. But he is in the book. But he would come in and talk to me. And my father would say something like, of course he's going to have surgery. Let's move on with this. And he would turn around and smile at my dad. And he goes, I'm sorry, sir, but you're not my patient. He is. So do you mind if I talk to him? And he'd spin back around. He's the only man I ever knew ever talked back to my father. And my father was a Marine drill instructor. Talking back to him was not easy. And I thought, you are the man. I was impressed with him. And one of the other things he did, other than the legs, is he reconstructed my hand. When I was born, this is my thumb, and this is my pinky. And when I was born, I love that there's a finger called Pinky. That's the silliest little name I ever heard. But anyway, when I was born, the knuckle that's in my pinky was in my thumb. So my thumb could go all over the place, but my pinky was stationary. So he took the knuckle out of my thumb, put it in my pinky, and that gave me a pinch. Now, they don't completely come together now, and that's because I was in a car wreck when Catherine was pregnant with our older child. This kid in our neighborhood decided to go backwards and ran into my car, and he broke my thumb. And I got out of the car, and he comes over and he goes, well, I'm sorry, your thumb's broke, but your wife's okay. You're okay. It's going to be fine. And I said, if anything happens to my wife or the baby, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill your parents, and I'm going to own your home. He was like, okay, cool. And we laughed, and it was fine. I didn't kill him. He's fine. But anyway, that kept me from pinching anymore. And it made it hard to turn back papers, but that's about the only thing it really did to change things. I have gone on, lived my life. I'm very proud of it, and I'm proud of the family that I've built and some of the things that we've done together. And I think it's really important that we understand that a disability is just a detail. It's just a part of the story. It isn't the whole story. All right, why don't we show you some of these, and then I'll be glad to take any questions you have. This is me. I drew that. I have a YouTube show called Harmon Speaks. I don't know if I'm going back to it, because after I did 5 years of that, I made a documentary. And we have just finished shooting it. It's being edited now by a nice friend of mine. And every time I contact him and say, how's it going? He said, would you leave me alone? So I don't know. I don't know how it's going. But I hope it's going to be okay. Would you advance the slide, please? Okay, there we go. Thank you. Now, I'll just go through these one at a time. These are my barrier breakers. The first one is there's only one rule for kids, and that's be polite. I don't care that kids come up and talk to me. I prefer they do that than be scared. And a lot of them are scared of me first time I see them. We walked into a movie theater one time not long ago, and this little kid was with her mother, and she just started screaming and was hiding behind mom. And I was walking by, and the mother said, "I'm so sorry. She's just young. She doesn't understand." And I said, "Oh, I'm not upset with your daughter. She's fine. I'm a little upset with your mom, though." They said, "Why?" And I said, "You've never mentioned it. Some people are different, right?" "Well, no." "Well, maybe it's time." Because why would you want her to live in a world where she's scared that everybody looks different? That's not much of a world, is it? That's a lot of us do. The next one, I love this one. This may be my favorite of the 10. Ask my name before you ask any other questions. If you don't know my name, what do you want to know about my hands? I don't ask you about your hands. I find that odd. If you want to come up and say, "Hey, Gary," or "What's your name?" "I'm Gary." "I'm Lori." Okay, we're friends now. Let's talk. That's all I need. But if you just walk up and start asking, I find that kind of strange. We were at the beach once, and I was walking down to join my family. They were already down there. And this guy came up to me, and he was fairly short, perfectly round. He had no shirt on and a cowboy hat. And he walked up to me, and he looked at me, and he goes, "What the heck happened to you, bud?" And I laughed, and I said, "Well, I learned to read, and that made all the difference." I went over and sat down. Catherine's rolling her eyes because she knew I was rude to somebody else. And the good thing is he came over, and he sat down in the sand beside me. And he said, "I must have offended you, and I'm sorry." And I said, "No, you didn't offend me. I just think it's a funny question." I said, "What do you mean, what happened to me? Why am I ugly? I look like my parents." I don't know what you're asking." And he said, "Well, I'm talking about your hands." And I said, "Well, I'm talking about the fact that you're this big and you're not wearing your shirt." Well, I mean, we all have our story, right? Ask me about my story. Don't ask me what happened. And we talked about it for a little while. I don't know if I helped him, but I tried. I tried. The next one, avoid sharing your opinion of my appearance. We were at a pool once, right? My kids were swimming. It was hot, and I decided I was going to go as well. So I got my prosthetic legs off. I was getting ready to go get in the water, and one of my kids and a friend of his jumped up out of the pool. And the boy walked over to me, and he goes, "You ain't got no legs, Knoxville. You have to love them," right? And I said, "I believe that sentence is, you do not have any legs." Like, okay, fine. And he's looking, and he goes, "And you're ugly." And I laughed. And I said, "The two are not connected." And he just laughed. And I said, "Now, do you have your mother here?" And he said, "Yeah, she's over there." And I said, "I want you to go tell her that I said you were rude." And he did. Boy, they're dumb, aren't they? And he went over and told his mama. And she got up out of her chair and came over to share a piece of her mind. And I figured she probably couldn't spare it. So I sat her down right by me. And I said, "I just want to ask you a couple of questions." And she said, "Okay." And I said, "I currently teach in the Juvenile Detention Center. That was my last assignment as a teacher. I loved it there. Those boys needed a teacher, and so I tried to give them one. But I said, do you know how children become juvenile delinquents?" And she said, "No, I don't." And I said, well, tragically, it usually starts with pets. They start mistreating cats and dogs and goldfish or whatever they have, and they find out that they like it. And then they start telling old people they're ugly. And then it progresses from there. And she said, "I promise I'll spank him when I get home." And I said, "That's not what I'm asking you to do. You're just hitting him. What's that going to do? I want you to go down and go home and talk to him and explain to him there's some rules in this world. And one of them is, old men may be ugly, but you don't have to remind us. We already know. We have mirrors in our house. All your job is to be nice. That's all they have to do. And then they might not go to juvie." I stayed for a few years later. He never showed up. So hopefully she helped him. I don't know. Next one. There are no degrees of disability. All have their advantages and disadvantages. There's not one that's the super bad disability. They're all something we have to get used to. In my own mind, I would be terrified of losing my sight. But I might someday. It turns out my dad did. and it's hereditary. So I might get it. I don't know. But if I do, I have somebody I trust by my side, and I think somehow we'll get through it. Scares me, but we'll get through it. So all disabilities are something you get used to. Let's see. Take a walk with people, even in a wheelchair. This is about language. I urge you not to let language get in the way. You want to make sure that you talk to people. Saying you go to take a walk with a person in a wheelchair, it's not an insult. They're all right with you and they're fine. It's going to be okay. Just avoid calling it something horrible like cripple, and we're going to be okay. I prefer it ruggedly handsome, but you call me whatever you want. All right, thank you, sir. If you go ahead, I'll wrap this up. Next slide. It's probably all I sent him. There you go. All right. This one I'll run right through. My legs are not fake. They're prosthetics. I put this in there because when I was a kid, kids at school like to step on them. And that it didn't make me mad, but eventually it would break them. And so, treat them. It's a part of my body. That's my point with that. Offer assistance, but only give it if the offer is accepted. If I'm standing in front of a door with about 5 bolts in my arm and I'm juggling keys, I probably need some help. So don't run up, grab the keys, knock me over, and open the door. But you walk over and go, Gary, you need some help with that? And then I'll thank you and ask for the help. Earlier today, I can't button and unbutton my jacket. I had some young man here, I don't remember his name there, or I brag on him, but I asked him if he'd help me. He couldn't wait. He was very polite about it, helped me out, asked if he needed anything else. That's how it should work. There he is. He's in the back corner. Hi, buddy. Tell me your name again. Joseph, yeah. I told him he was mad at me. I was mad at him because he was young and looks better than I do, but that's okay. That's not his fault. All right. Beware of false pedestal compliments. I have a lot of people who come up to me where they don't know me at all. They've just seen me. You just inspired me. And that just makes me crazy. If I've done something that inspired you, that's really sweet. I love God. I invite you to participate in my life every day. If I do something good by accident, thank you. I appreciate it. But I'm not here to inspire anybody. I just want to be a part of the life that you're a part of. And just try to enjoy it together. That's just kind of silly. The other one, any other kind of compliment, I'm ruggedly handsome, super cool. All right, good. And the last one is, bullying is never good, and I discourage you. I got a little story with this. Yesterday, I crossed the border into Virginia. We stopped at the rest area. Now, keep in mind, the people who were there probably were not from Virginia. So I'm not trying to make your state look bad. But they had those little handicap buttons on the door that you push it, the door opens, right? And this man was sitting there, and his wife came out of the bathroom. I assume it was his wife. And he said, I saw you hit the handicap button going in. Are you retarded? And I walked right past him, and I looked in his face, and I said, really? Really? And he just kind of looked at me. He didn't get it. I moved on. I wasn't going to explain it. We shouldn't still be saying these things. Come on. It's 2024. Let's have a little bit of brains. All right. If you'll advance a couple more slides here one more time. I want to show you some people. I made this difficult, didn't I? All right. Oh, there you go. There you go. This is Frank Harmon and his wife, Linda. These are my parents. I wanted you to see them. And what I want you to notice, first of all, they're older. This is near the end of their lives. But I wanted you to notice they look like sweet little people, don't they? Look at that dad. He's cute. He's a sweet little old man. He was the Sunday school leader of the church. He was a very nice guy. His biggest sin outside the house is he said prayer as par. I'm not sure where he got that, but he always mispronounced the word. Otherwise, a nice, sweet-looking man. That's the lesson. Guys who beat their children often look like very nice guys. Next. And I just wanted to show that I do get a date every now and then. this is my cute wife. Okay, go ahead. If I say too much, I won't be able to ride home. This is my older son. This is CJ with a very cool haircut. My son was born a girl. He lives as a man now. And we love the children God sends us, and that's all I have to say about that. I love him, and I'm good. Next. That's my son in the back. He's hiding now, but that's okay. He doesn't really look like this now. He's got long hair that he's never brushed, and he's a different guy. But I like to embarrass him and show him the old picture because it's just fun. All right, next. This is my children's book. The line I quoted to the kids this morning is in the end of this book. And the next one, please. And this is my memoir. Some of you read. My wife has both of those, and we'll be selling them out Sunday. Anybody would like one afterward. Now, I would love to hear some questions. So I'm going to pause. I actually go to sit down if you don't mind. And I would love to hear your question. All at once. Okay. Here we go.
In the book, you are named after your grandfather, but you wrote under a pseudonym. Are you actually named after your grandfather?
I am not, no.
No? So
I am
your
not
grandpa
named
wasn't
after my
Gary?
grandfather, no. There are a couple of reasons why I picked that name. First of all, the very first member of our family that came to America came during the Irish potato famine. And this is my father's family, not my mother's. And the relative at the time was a man named Walter Sullivan, is the name I gave my grandfather in the book. And Walter Sullivan was a crazy old man. I'm not going to bore you with his stories, but I love the name. I like it. And so I started thinking about it, and I said, Walt is W-A-L-T. My name is Gary, G-A-R-Y, same number of letters. I don't know where Nelson came from, dropped out of the sky somewhere. But my last name is Harmon, H-A-R-M-O-N. Nelson, same number of letters. So that's how that wound up. I tried to name characters something that I could remember, and I failed. I can remember Frank Harmon and Linda, as I used them so much, but I have a chart somewhere at home of what all the names are, or who the people were. The reason I changed all the names is because of legality. You can't really talk about somebody in your book without asking their permission or changing the names. And there was a gym coach in the book that you may remember that story. It was not a very good story. He was the only one that got treated badly other than my dad. And my dad was dead, and the gym coach was still alive. And I said, I'm not going to go ask for his permission. So I changed his name. We published the book, and then the jerk died. So that's how that worked. I did not kill him, Lori, no. But that's where the name came from. Thank you.
I just wanted to know why the book is called Clown in Cobwebs. There's no actual clown in the book, and there's a reference to your father at the end of the book. Looks like a clown in cobwebs. So I'm curious as to...
That's a really good question, probably the one I get the most. I am going to ask, does anybody have a theory? Because I kind of hate to break that bubble. I like the metaphor, so I use it, but yeah, go ahead. You have a theory? Yeah. I'm sorry, I thought you raised your hand. I'm sorry. Anybody have a theory of what? Do you remember the poem in the beginning? All right, what was the poem about? Anybody remember? Yeah, okay. Let me explain to you. The poem was written to a high school girlfriend. And she had this habit. First of all, she was a queen, aren't our women? And she was in charge. And my job was to entertain her. We'd go out, have fun, do whatever we wanted to do. I'd pay for it. That was my job. And a lot of times when she was tired of being entertained by me, I felt like I was just being put on the side somewhere and put away. and then she would call me back when she needed me. And that's why she's not sitting in the back row. My wife is. She's gone. And so anyway, that's how she made me feel. As a boy with a disability with my family, I felt that way many times. One time, it's in my book that I went to the doctor and I had fingerprints on my neck. And the doctor wanted to know what happened. And I said, I must have done something. And he said, Gary, you have 2 fingers. There are a lot of fingerprints. What happened? I don't know. My dad told me if I ever told anybody that he hurt me, that I'd be put in a foster care system where they would probably rape me. So I didn't want to do that. That scared me to death. So I did not tell the doctor what happened. So when we left, he did what doctors are supposed to. He contacted the DCS, whatever they called it back in those days. And they sent out some people to investigate. And they don't do it well like they do it today. Back in those days, they didn't really know what they were doing. So they called and let us know they were coming. But that's not how you catch somebody doing something bad, right? So I got a chance to think about it, and they showed up wanting to talk to me. They talked to me in front of my whole family. They didn't pull me aside. They talked in front of everybody. So I did what I do. I told jokes, I tried to be silly, and I made them laugh. And that's how I survived. And when they got up, they said, well, he's okay, everything's fine, and they left. Once again, the clown and cobwebs had come out and entertained, and then they left. To make the story, the point I need to make, though, when they left, my dad told me I was showing off, and he knocked me around the house. And after he got through knocking around the house, I said, I just want you to know if it weren't for me being shown off, you'd be in jail. He did it again, but that's okay. We were done after that. So I was the clown when I was a kid. And when he got too old to do what he wanted to do in his life, he became the clown. He became reflective at the end of his life. He began to ask, did I overdo it? Did I do things I didn't need to do? And he didn't ask me, he asked everybody else. And that's why I put that story at the ending as a dream, that he was sitting in the same stall that he locked me in. And he was finding himself as a clown in cobweb, trapped by his own guilt and his own personality. And I dragged the stairs up to the doorway and invited him to come back out. But I can't make him come out. That's his walk. So that's how the story ends. So he becomes the clown in cobwebs at the end of the story. Thank you for the question, and I hope that made some sense. I've had a lot of people, I don't understand that, and I get that, but that's what I was hoping we get to. All right.
Hi, Gary.
Hi.
I just had a question, when reading the book and hearing what a rough childhood you had. I just wondered how you felt about, your faith, or if you had faith at that point. It'd be easy to feel like you were abandoned. So I just wondered how you felt, how you feel now.
How do I feel about what exactly?
Faith.
I'm sorry, just having trouble.
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, faith.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Faith?
Faith.
Faith or faith? Oh, my faith.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. I have bad hearing. I'm very sorry. Faith is something that I think you improve as you age. When you start out as a young person, you're not sure what anything means. So I don't know that you know a whole lot about faith. As a kid, I didn't. I went to church all the time. I grew up a Methodist. It was a sweet church. They never once asked a question. I don't know how they wouldn't know that I was being mistreated. How would they not know? Now, my dad was smart enough to never bruise me where it's visible. But other than that, they had to be able to tell. But they never did. And I did, as a kid, see that as a shortcoming of God. I'm going to your church, I'm seeing your people, and they're not helping me. I thought maybe that meant he wasn't going to help me either. But as I got older, I started realizing that God's helping me all the time. He may not have been able to wake those folk up, but look at all the other things he did in my life. And I'm grateful for the things that he did. I do feel my faith is now very important to me, and I try to walk very closely with what he wants me to do. I fail a lot, but I try. So I don't think that my upbringing is a failure of God's. It's a failure on a lot of places, but I don't blame God for it. Thank you for the question. I hope I answered it. There you go. You're welcome. You need to teach your girl how to run. That's a girl run.
Good afternoon, Gary.
Good afternoon.
In your book, you talked about your college experiences there and your experiences in politics or in student government.
Right.
I was a little surprised that you didn't pursue politics. You're a strong advocate. One, were you offered, something in politics or anything? And then second question, why did you not pursue that? Why did you pursue a career?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last question.
Why did you pursue a career in teaching, I think? Or is that what you ended up doing, right?
Okay, because I'm not very smart. No, that's not right. I'm just kidding. Thank you for the questions. I do love politics. I always have and I always will. And I was student body president at UT. That was a great experience for me. The UT environment was very supportive. I had a lot of people, though, tell me I could never be elected because I was disabled. It was not a problem. I won easily and handily. So that was what the students were looking for, was somebody who would actually do something. And I was willing to do that, so I think they liked me. I also was, a few years ago, the president of the Teachers Association in Knoxville. I was thank you, appreciate it. I was president for 4 years, and nobody had ever been a president for 4 years before I did it. Yeah, they changed the bylaws to make that possible, but I was president for 4 years. I had a superintendent who was new my last term, who came in and he said, "Now, how do you keep getting reelected?" And I would say, "Have you ever seen The Godfather?" And he was like, "Well, yeah." And I said, "Well, I'm a wartime Don." And he would laugh. He goes, "What does that mean?" And I said, "I like the ugly part." And he goes, okay. And you know what he did? He joined the union that day. He became a member. And we didn't have to fight like that. He did what we needed. We appreciated it. So I like that part. I like helping. But have you ever seen something become law? There's the old political science joke about it's like watching sausage getting made. It's ugly. You might like the sausage, but you're not going to like the way it's made. And I thought politics was a lot like that. And at the end, in my age now, I want to be able to look at the mirror and go, yeah, I'm not that bad. I didn't want to sell out. I didn't want to promise things I couldn't do. And I didn't want to take money for doing things I shouldn't have done. And it was ugly. And I just didn't want to be a part of it. And I also find that I am not always in step politically with what my country wants. I'm going to say this is political. I hope you'll forgive me. But a few years ago, there was somebody running for president who was talking about a reporter with a cerebral palsy. And he imitated him in a way that was insulting. And I thought, well, that's the end of this guy. Boy, was I wrong. We made him the king of the world, didn't we? It disturbs me. So I didn't go into politics. I thought that helping children was something I could always have respect for doing. And when I started doing this, I realized my 34 years of teaching helped me. and help me learn how to do it. So thank you for the question. I didn't mean to give you a book answer, but I appreciate it. All right. There got to be more. Yeah, there's one in the back from my buddy who helped me.
So we're a pretty active and very eager community, and I think you being here has helped us really kind of get a better understanding of how we could be aware. Do you have any suggestions or ideas of how we as a community could maybe have a reach out?
Well, there are a lot of people out in the world now who are doing things like TikToks and things like that who have disabilities. And there are a lot of people other than me that are doing it. And I think having kids see some of that may be helpful. Those folks, unlike me, are young still, and they may find them more inspiring. And, what am I going to do? Sit and do a TikTok about how I don't go to sleep anymore because I'm old? But they talk about their prosthetics and how they work and what they do. And I guess I'm too old for that, but they still do it. So I think using examples like that help. And there are a lot of good books about disabilities. And I think one of the things that I could encourage you to do is if you're in a public place and you have small children with you, and you see somebody and your kid wants to go over and ask them questions, let them. Now, I'm going to be honest, somebody won't like it. Somebody said, kid, I don't come out here to answer your question. That may happen, because it's the world. Some people are going to be rude, some aren't. And there may be days you could catch me where I not want to do it either. But you don't want to avoid that because somebody might be rude, because they might be wonderful, right? It's always possible. And I always considered the reason parents don't let kids ask certain questions is because they're bad things that we don't want them to learn about, like crime or being naughty with one another, or those kinds of things that we don't talk about in public. So if we can't talk about it, why a person's disabled, it's because there's something wrong with it. And there's nothing wrong with it. We're okay. So talk to us about it. Teach your children how to talk about it. I think it's one of the best things you can do for them. Thank you for the question. He's a good guy. I like him. I'm glad you recruited him.
I will take this opportunity to read a question from our basket downstairs. How did your relationship with your parents affect your relationship with your kids?
I'm sorry, I can't hear. What? Wow, that's a good question. Well, it does in some ways. I've never beaten my children. I've never locked them in a room, and I've never told them I was ashamed of them. Those are the three things I took away from it. Do you remember the story, if those who read the book, about me being put outside in the snow? That was the chapter that made me who I am today. And when I look back at that, I was asked by another lady who was an author, was that traumatic to write about? It was hard. I wrote the chapter 5 times. I kept highlighting and deleting it after I finished it, because it didn't say it the way I wanted it. But on the last time, I was fairly pleased with it, but I don't think I ever included what I learned from the experience. And so I'm going to give you a little extra for free, and that hopefully will help. I realized when I was sitting out there in the snow, 3 different things. One of them was that I don't mind the cold. And that seems like I'm making fun of it, but I really like the cold. And it always goes back to the thing that God doesn't give you things you cannot handle. I don't know that that's true. And I know it's not biblical, but I also know that I like cold. Number 2 is I learned that when I cried in front of my father, I was feeding him. That was an important thing to learn. And I had to decide that night that I would never cry in front of him again. And I never did, even to his face when he was lying in a coffin. I didn't cry that day either. I buried him and walked away. And the last one, and the thing that was the hardest for me to say out loud, is my father didn't love me. That's a hard thing to say. That's a very hard thing to say. Now, my kids can get a list to you of things I've done wrong. Every dad does. We've all made mistakes. But there are a couple of things that they cannot say about me. They could never say to my face that I didn't love them, as I have every day they've been on earth, and a lot of days before they got here. I love them dearly. I don't judge them. I try to be the kind of dad that helps them get where they want to go. Have I made mistakes? Lord, yes. But that's what I've learned from it. And I try my best to give them a daddy they can be proud of. Thank you.
Don't be shy. It's just a mic. I do have a few more index cards.
I'm sorry?
I have I will come stand up here now.
Thanks.
I have a few more index cards with questions. So, do you think, have been effective as an educator, advocate, and leader if you did not experience and live with your disability?
Yeah, but not the same way. Everything would have been different, right? You can't take away part of your life and be the same person. So the disability eventually put me in this chair. And I think that's fine. This is where I wanted to be. But if I grew up with hands and feet, look at all I would not have learned and what I wouldn't have experienced. I don't regret any of it. I don't. I don't sit back and say, I wish I could have had a happier childhood. Come on now, really? Don't all of us think that at some time or another when we feel sorry for ourselves? So no, I am who I am. I'm thankful that God let me be here, and I'm doing the best I can. And I don't want to change anything. It'd be nice if I was skinny, but okay.
On page 31 of your book, on page 31
Oh my
of your book,
gosh. Chapter and
this one's
verse.
for me.
I'm going to need a drink. Tennessee whiskey, thank you. It's not. I know we're Presbyterian, but I wouldn't do that to you. Go ahead.
And for those of us who haven't read it, I will read the quote I'm talking about.
Okay.
How easily the coat could morph into a collar, the doctor a reverend, a hospital a church. Science is the new religion, but the same faith is still demanded of its followers. Talk to us about that.
No. I think sometimes our institutions replace our humanity. And that was something I always worried about as being a teacher. Because you have rules, you have to enforce your rules. But there is a reason we enforce rules. And if we don't connect to the human part of it, what's the point? Does that make sense to you? And so I've always sought out churches that understood my humanity more than worried about whether I followed their list of beliefs and not beliefs. When I started going to the church my wife and I attend now, they had a minister there I just absolutely loved. I couldn't help but to be his parishioner. Loved him. And one of the things he asked me when it was time to start thinking about joining the church, I hope this doesn't offend you. I hope you understand this in the way I mean it. But he said, Gary, is Jesus your Lord and Savior? And I said, does he have to be? And he looked at me for a moment and he said, I understand the place where that comes from. That's the hurt part of you and the anger part of you. And I said, I do believe in Jesus, and I do believe he's my Lord and Savior. I'm just not sure that I believe I have to tell you that. Does that make sense? And he said, you're right, you don't. You really don't. And he said, to go to church here, all you got to do is say you're looking, and we'll search with you. I like that, so I did. And I guess if you relate this to a hospital, doctors, you can't argue with a doctor. They know everything, right? Not at all. But they give that facade. And so you start being a statistic and a page on a chart and stop being the person. Fortunately, they have nurses who understand that you're human beings and take time to treat you as human beings. And I had some really good doctors, too. So you can get beyond the institutionality of it and see the people behind it. And with teaching, when you look out in a crowd like this, you're all the same. I don't know you. I know a couple of you, but I don't know you individually. You're sweet faces facing forward, and I do my thing and we leave. But it's not until you really get to know the student and the student understands you as a person that there's a connection. And that connection carries you beyond just learning rote things in the classroom to wanting to be a better person. And I wrote that because I hope that in all those institutions, those involved with it would reach beyond the usual and help you find the extraordinary. I think church should always be an extraordinary place. It was today, and not because of this. You have good ministers. You have a good congregation. I didn't go anywhere and find anybody who was rude or quiet even. Everybody talked to me. Everybody was nice. And that's amazing. I'm going to go away going, that Bush Hill was a really nice church. But that's the way churches want you to leave, right? So thank you for being kind. I really appreciate you. See, I turned it back on you so I could admit that I didn't know what I was talking about. Go ahead.
Do we have any more burning questions from folks out in the congregation? Oh, I see one.
Thank you.
Well, maybe this isn't a nice question then, but you know, and a lot of people that are abused, they turn out to be bullies, turn out to be anything but model citizens. Some turn to crime and so on. I guess I'm wondering how you're able to overcome all this abuse. I mean, it could drive another person crazy.
I'm going to need some help. I can't hear.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Can you tell me what he's asking? Uh-huh. I was smarter than they are and meaner than they are. Well, I am. Do you remember the story about the little boy who wanted to beat me up in elementary school? I love that story. It's a true story. We walked out to the rock wall. I said, I can't beat you up. I don't have hands. But we can kick the wall, and whoever kicks the wall hardest wins. And he looked at me, and he's like, now, come on, man. I know what you'll do. You'll make me kick it, you'll tap it, go, ooh, you would, and I'll be hurt. I said, nope, I'll go first. Now, he didn't know I didn't have feet, right? Nobody ever asked me. Nobody ever asked those things. So I went first, I kicked the wall, and I hopped around like I was hurt. And, oh. And then he walked up to the wall, reared back, and kicked it and broke 2 toes. They took that dumb little boy to the hospital. And next thing I knew, there was this great big hand landing on my shoulder, and it was my principal. And he took me back to his office, and he sat me down, and he said, wipe that smirk off your face. And I was like, no, not yet. And he said, you think this is funny, don't you? And I said, I do, yes. And he said, that boy broke 2 toes. I said, I was aiming for 3. And he said, Gary, is there any chance that he's been picking on you all the year? I said, yep, every single day. And he said, well, why didn't you come tell me? Sons of Marines don't tattle. That's not what they do. They get revenge. I don't really mean that, but boys didn't go tell on their friends that way. We didn't do that. I knew the day would come. I didn't know what I was going to do with him, but the day came. And I was the king of the playground for about a year after that, so it worked out pretty nicely. And most of them were not bullies so much as they just didn't talk to me that much. I made my first friend in 3rd grade. And I got to tell you, I make good friends. I called him last week. We're still buddies. I love him to death. But he came to me wanting to be my friend and not out of curiosity or out of a desire to be mean. He just wanted to be my friend. And we didn't talk about my hands and feet. We talked about the fact that we both love Star Trek. And that brought us together. I still love Star Trek. You Star Wars people just get on my nerves. I love Star Trek. It's much better. But anyway, the other kids, eventually they knew me. They knew of me. I had a reputation, I guess. But they didn't really get to know me personally. And that's okay. That's okay. Thank you for the question.
I have a question,
The
Gary.
preacher's going to ask me.
Uh-oh.
I'm in trouble now. Go ahead.
Well, you are a very good storyteller.
Thank you.
And we had lots of conversations about your stories. We think you need to write another book from your faith perspective. And of course, there's a lot of faith in your resilience as you've faced horrors growing up. You talked previously about never blaming God for the body that is fearfully and wonderfully made for you. Some people would be angry at God for having such a body. You are not. And you said something earlier about realizing that there were a lot of other things helping you along the way, that God has always been there. As young children, we often look to our parents as our first image of God.
Right.
And maybe your doctor was more that. But I wonder about the story you would tell when you became aware and you could see that it was God. You changed your focus to see how many people were helping you come into a fuller Gary.
Right. I really appreciate that question, and it allows me to say something I meant to say and I haven't yet. If you look at my book right off the bat, the first thing you think is this is a story about a person with a disability and how he survived the pratfalls of life. It isn't about that. It's a book about mentorship. And I mean this very seriously. The greatest responsibility we all have is as we're going up the mountain that we're supposed to climb, and we all climb different mountains and take different paths, but as we're going up the mountain, our job as Christians is to lean back and go, give me your hand. Let me help you. And they give you their hand, and you pull them up, and God willing, you'll get them to the next level. They may slip, and hopefully they won't. And you'll have the safety rope on them, so hopefully they don't fall all the way down. But you're going to try to get them to that next level. My book is about all the people who did that for me, including the doctor, the teachers, the guidance counselors, the superintendent was not one of them. The chancellor of the University of Tennessee was one. I don't know if you remember that story, but I was in a wheelchair and I had to go to a top floor to a class and they didn't have an elevator. So I had to get out of the chair and crawl up the stairs. And I got up 2 flights And he was sitting at the top of the second one. And I crawled up and I sat down beside of him. Now, I knew him because I was student body president. But he looked at me and he said, this is either a story that's going to make me more ashamed than I've ever been in my life, or this is the weirdest protest I've ever seen. He said, which one is it? I said, prepare for shame. And I asked him why in a university of had all kinds of different students, they didn't have an elevator in the biggest building for non-engineers on campus. And he sat there and he said, I don't have a good answer for that. And he said, I know you're about to graduate, but he said, I can promise you if you'll come visit in the fall, there'll be 2 of them in this building. And I said, well, they have my name on them. And he said, you're an arrogant little cuss, aren't you? And I said, yes, sir. They do not have my name on them, but there's one on each side of the building. He kept his word. So there you go. That's mentorship. He didn't do what I wanted exactly, but he did what we needed exactly. That was great. And I am going to do another book, by the way.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Please buy 5 of them this time, okay? And it's going to be called Physically Different. And it's going to be a collection of stories, because that's what I do best. And if you're going to grow to be this old, you might as well collect a few stories. The one of the shirtless man with the cowboy hats in it, and there are a lot of good stories like that. But it will have, like all my works, I think there will be a religious tone. But I'm not in a position to tell people, I don't think, what to believe or how to believe it. I just try to be an example and let it go with that. I think God does the other part.
I'm gonna boldly speak on behalf of our book group and hope that you get a good editor, because we have some edits for A Clown in the Cobweb. I said that because your stories are so good, but there were points where we were left wanting. An editor.
Right. You want to leave the reader wanting more. I think that's very important. It's a lot like marriage. If they know too much about you too soon, they're ready to throw you out in the backyard. You got to keep a little mystery going, right? She's nodding no. I've known you all along and you're a pain in the butt, and that's okay. Thank you, darling. Love you too. But there are times I think you need to lead them up to the point where they ask the question and then let them solve their own question. I don't know the answers. I really don't. So I just ask the questions, and I hope that helps. I hope it does. And I feel like that's what good ministers do. You lead us to see an issue. We see the questions that bring our lives into what you're talking about, and then we have to go home and figure it out. That's how it works. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay? Now, we can't close this too early because they're not going to listen to a word I have to say for the rest of the day. I promise you. We'll be in the corner. I think I know what you think. Be quiet. Yes, ma'am. So go ahead, ask questions. Whatever you have.
Are there any more questions from out there?
Okay.
Find them. And
It's hard for me too.
I don't want them to, you don't have to compete against
Right.
one another, but actually show them at the same time, or if you believe they will. When do you think that might happen?
I don't know that it ever will. I wish it were. And I think, have any of you ever seen any of the Paralympics? Anybody? Not many, right? Not many. And I want to tell one story from one of them that I enjoyed. There was this boy, I don't know how old he was, but they're all boys to me now. They're all young. And he was running some kind of race, and he had some form of intellectual disability. And he got out with the teams, other teams, and they ran. He was just running the hardest he could go. And at the end, he came in fourth. So he didn't place. But it's the Paralympics. Everybody gets a medal, and it's nice. And he's just jumping up and down and celebrating. He's having a great time. And the reporter walks out and he goes, well, now you know you came in fourth, right? He said, yeah. And they said, so why are you so happy? And he said, oh, you don't understand. He said, that's my mom up there in the stand. And she's never been able to get me to see me run before. And she came to the Olympics to see me, and I'm so happy. And he's waving at his mother, who comes running down, scoops him up, and hugs him, gives him a big bear hug. And I thought, the whole world needs to see that. Because we've forgotten what winning is. I'll never be the first one across the line. I'll never be. I'm too slow. But that's not the race I'm running. I'm running a different race. Thank you for the question. I wish they would show them. I think we'd learn a lot. But we're afraid because we'll feel sorry for them. And I don't know why you would. They're some of the most beautiful people you'd ever hope to meet. In my documentary, by the way, it's called Challenge Accepted. So go see it if you hear of it. There is a scene in it where I visit a group called Sunshine Ambassadors. And this is a group of people between the ages of 11 and 60. And they have neurodivergent minds and think a little differently than we do. And I promise you they're the happiest people on earth. And I visited them twice. I love them. This is the only legal drug I absolutely enjoy. I go in this room, and they're so full of love. If you walk out of that room feeling badly, you're not paying attention. And I went in this last time. They met me before. So I went in and I said, we're doing a documentary today. Who wants to be in the movie? Everybody's jumping up and down, very excited. They all want to be in the movie. And I said, now, I have to be honest with you. I can't put everybody in. Although we're going to sweep the room. You'll be in it. But I'm going to interview everybody, and we'll use as many interviews as we can. And I said, okay. And I think my editor, who loves this experience as much as I do, will probably scatter them throughout the movie so we get as many in as possible. And we went around and asked him, and one of the kids said that he had trouble remembering things, but he always remembered the night that they had to come to dance practice. And I said, why? And he said, this is the most fun I ever have. And he loved the class. And most of the boys there told me they loved it. And I asked them why, and they said, the girls. I knew that answer. And what's wonderful about the answer is that's what non-disabled kids would say too. Isn't it wonderful that they have a commonality? We're all human. They may think differently, but not worse, not better, just differently. And that's the message I'm trying to get across. Thank you.
Floor is still open. And as we come to a close in this discussion, my hope, and I think the hope of a lot of us here, is that this discussion continues. It is not an ending of this event and we put it away in the closet and never look or talk about it again. My hope is that we take what we've learned, what Gary has shared with us, and we take it out into the world with love and care and compassion for everyone we meet. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, Gary, for coming and sharing your life with us.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
And if you haven't met Gary in person, given him a hug, shaken his hand, he will be out there. He's also an amazing artist. The picture you saw at the beginning of the slideshow, he drew and does it consistently every time. I would never be able to do that. So please meet, talk, and thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday afternoon.
Okay. Well, before you leave, Catherine will be outside Here she is. She's going to do it here. I have a flyer that has my 10 barrier breakers on it. It also has contact information on it. If you belong to a business or a community group or anybody who wants a speaker about this, please let me know. We figured out how to get through 66 now. And when we first started, I have no clue. And I was like, it's saying we're going to D.C. And my wife's like, have some faith. It'll be okay. No. And somehow we got here, and I don't know how. But she was driving, so I don't care. So now that we figured it out, we'd love to come back. If you know a group that would like to hear from me or would benefit from hearing from me, please let me know. And thank you.